Remnant 2, developed by Gunfire Games, published by Gearbox, and released in 2023, is a game that is full of surprises. Not just the surprise that I had when I realized it wasn't your typical looter shooter, but also dozens upon dozens of secrets to be discovered within it. What is here is exciting, competent, and full of beautiful locations to explore, and with ample room to expand while still feeling complete out of the box. I usually can resist buying into the hype for new releases, but I do have an Achilles heel. While I don't watch pre-release trailers or read previews and the whatnots, I have a sicko tendency of checking Steam charts once a day and seeing what games are popular at the moment. I'm just speaking for myself here, but I get a kick from knowing that a game I'm playing or following is doing well. It's also a pretty good way to learn about new games when you don't follow the cycle. This is where Remnant 2 comes in. I bought it on a whim. I hadn't played the first game, and from my understanding of it, the game was a looter shooter akin to Borderlands or Destiny. The multiplayer focus was also a bit of a turn-off to me, and I'm extremely adverse to anything that resembles a live service. I've also never liked or wanted to like anything that is branded soulslike. So why did I buy this? Call it silly brand loyalty to From Software. They just make them like no one else can, and that remains the truth after playing Remnant 2. But the game has made me rethink how I'll approach the Souls-like branding in the future. In Remnant 2, you play as a person in a post-apocalyptic world that feels very reminiscent of The Last of Us. When I started the game, I was a little bummed out. I'm pretty over ruined cities overtaken by nature. Thankfully, it wasn't before long that you leave boring old Earth and begin your career as a realm-traveling gun bobo. Your main verbs in this game are shooting, exploring, and all of that which is entailed in the art of build composition. Mostly you'll be shooting, and sorting through your ring collection. They really need a search bar on this. Build composition is a big part of the fun here, and the game succeeds at presenting dozens of interesting choices to the player. In the past few months, I've been really getting into Resident Evil remakes, and Remnant 2 is a bird of a feather here. This game is a bread and butter third-person shooter, and no matter what weapon you use or build you've crafted, you're going to be doing a lot of shooting. Luckily, Gunfire nailed the fundamentals here, with a game that would make Leon S. Kennedy and Marcus Phoenix proud. Shooting and looting rhyme, but Remnant 2 is a lot more focused on the shooting. I was pretty baffled when I started the game. I expected to be showered in loot from the very beginning, but the game wasn't doling out very much at all. I was feeling shortchanged. Hours had passed and I was still in my starting gear, with my starting weapon. This is both a fault in my expectations and in how the game presents itself, but it isn't to the game's detriment. Remnant 2 is a complicated web of systems that is a little hard to explain, but I'll try my best. In Remnant 2, you have what are called campagons, which involve 5 or so main stages. At this point, the game starts to take a bit of a roguelike direction and begins to blur the lines of handcrafted content and procedurally generated. The good news here is, from what I understand, the whole game is handcrafted, but what pieces your playthrough will contain is randomized. This means that you won't be seeing everything on one playthrough, which could be considered either a good or a bad thing, depending on how much you're on the hook for the gameplay here. The setup is that Earth has recently kicked back an invasion from something called the Root, and the planet is now in recovery mode. The Root is some kind of cosmic, force of nature tree blight that is infesting the universe, ruining the worlds it passes through in the process. The Root has been beaten here, but it won't be long before it devours more worlds and returns even stronger than before. This is why we must go to the other worlds and plunder them for powerful artifacts to fight back with. The story here is fine, but in my 50 or so hours played, I still don't really understand what is happening at a wider macro level, but the game is packed to the brim with quests that dole out information about where you are to piece together later. The problem is that most of the story is contained either within long books, recordings that you have to stand still to listen to why we're still doing this, or from NPCs that are sparse, but when you find them they have about 10 minutes of dialogue to get through. How much this works for you is going to depend on how much you enjoy lore dumps, or how many hours you plan to sink into the game. Each world is generally made up of 2 or 3 main areas, with about a half a dozen connecting side areas. The areas that connect will be random, but again, the areas themselves are not procedurally generated. Each world has 2 main quests associated with it, meaning that while you'll be in the same biome per se, your perspective of it will be a bit different depending on which main quest you got. You're not given much direction when you arrive to a new location. The best directive that I can give is that your objective is simply to explore. Filling in the blanks on your map will in turn reveal new locations, most being side areas, but you'll always come to find one that will progress you down the critical path. In the exploration, you will find many secrets, some easy to find and some so obscure that it was only possible to figure out with data mining. This isn't just hidden areas and light puzzle elements though. From what I understand, most end-world bosses, of which I estimate there are about 12, have an alternate way of defeating them, resulting in a different reward. On top of this, some quests have multiple solutions, rewarding the extra inquisitive. Most of the secrets can be prodded out of the game with meticulous exploration, but some may just be too difficult for me to find on my own. The game doesn't want you to use a guide. It wants you to go over it with a fine-tooth comb, connecting the dots in the sort of Resident Evil kind of way. Trying every quest item on every lock is not a wrong way to figure stuff out. Beating the game on any difficulty will give access to the Explorer archetype, which, upon reaching max level, gains an ability to every so often scan the environment for any nearby secrets. I think this is a cool way of tackling the problem of handling secrets, as the game is designed to be completed multiple times. It's as if the devs were trying to give the players an optional access to an in-universe guide, and that makes sense to me. Now that I'm speaking on archetypes, I should probably tell you about them and the effect they play. Archetypes, or classes in case I slip up, here are pretty standard stuff. You level up, get new skills, and grow in power specific ways to your archetype. No matter what archetype you pick, you are going to be doing a lot of combat, and that still involves shooting and melee. But the class system is but just one of the character building mechanics at play here. Each archetype comes with traits exclusive to it when it is used as your primary, which means that while you won't be getting them when used as your secondary, you will still gain access to that archetype's abilities. When you use 2 archetypes together, you'll also get a new name for your class dependent on the combination, similar to something like the Darkest Dungeon. Neato. There are upwards of 6 different classes to unlock and level up, offering a lot of treadmill to completionists, and there are definitely worse games to lose hours grinding in. But for those seeking challenge instead, the progression doesn't stop at max level. Once you've got your 2 chosen archetypes to max level, the progression continues in the form of fine-tuning your build for higher difficulties. There are so many little things here to tweak and fiddle with to maximize your DPS and survivability that could possibly keep you busy well over the 100-hour mark of playing. One of the main ways you'll be tuning your build with is with rings. Rings, like a Souls game, provide some of the most substantial gains to your character, and there seems to be dozens upon dozens of them. So many rings, in fact, that the game's lack of a search bar can be a bit of a drag. While there is a favourite feature, it doesn't really help when there are just so many. I'm sure this will get patched eventually, and frankly, I only really fiddled with my rings when I was having trouble, but it's still a bit annoying. Remnant 2 boasts quite a few bosses, and at least to me, they're all pretty functional. No fights stood out, and there were no bosses I was itching to fight again, but also nothing so offensive that I would dread a fight. Most of the bosses are running on a MMO Dance Dance Revolution style of keeping the player moving through changing arenas and large AoEs. The importance of dodging will probably take a lot of third-person shooter fans out of their element, but those familiar with Souls, you'll adjust quite quickly. The last thing that I want to talk about is the game's presentation. Over the video, I'm sure you've formed an opinion on what the game's graphics are, but personally I found them to be fantastic. Combined with the sound design, and you've got this really atmospheric environments that feel like they belong more in a Souls than any looter shooter. The first world I went to was the alien world of Neyrud, which is both a planet and a spacecraft heading straight into a black hole. The visuals are absolutely striking and create a sense of dread, but after 15 minutes or so, I got this feeling that the whole thing was like a alien Matrix ripoff. Then I got to the world of Lozin, which entering gave me immediate Resident Evil 4 castle vibes, which, through a magical portal, transported me to what my mum calls Bloodborne at home. It was a bit weird at first. I was in awe of this rip-off feeling I was feeling. As I played more, though, the feeling of the game being a rip-off faded away, and what followed was an appreciation for these loving homages that the devs have crafted. As I said before, the premise of the game is you jumping between these vastly different worlds, for whom's only similarity is the presence of the root. If I'm correct in assuming that this game is highly influenced by cinema concept art, then, and quote me on this in 6 months, I am super excited to see where the DLC may take us. Just imagine the places we could go. Medieval worlds, underwater worlds. Fuck, we could even end up at Shrek's swamp to give him some breath mints. Maybe we could travel to Dude, Where's My Car world, and Zoltan would be the final boss. Don't listen to me. My imagination extends to 2000s movies, but I'm sure you can imagine more. While a sense of place is important in a game and is a core tenet in a Souls game, there can also be a lot of fun in the opposite of having no limits to where we could go. The very last thing, and probably the best thing I find about Remnant 2, is that it gets gun sounds right. Every gun that I have used in my time with the game has sounded loud and impactful, and it seems just to be such a simple thing, but how far does it go in a game where what you're mostly doing is shooting? Gunfire games, you nailed it. While I try not to review new games, us capital G gamers are having one of our best years yet. Baldur's Gate 3, Armored Core 6, and soon Starfield. It's tough to find the time for old games this holiday season. But with all that said, I've probably had more fun in Remnant 2 than I've had in Baldur's Gate 3. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but pound for pound fun factor, and Remnant 2 is not to be messed with. This is a solid 8 out of 10, operating on a 9 out of 10 level, whatever that means. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time. Rock on.